This is Conversations with Ronnie Keith. Thank you guys so much for joining me again. This is Conversations with Ronnie Keith. I am your host, Ronnie Keith. And I just want to take the time to thank you guys so much for continuing to support, continuing to download, listen. We're in several different countries now. And so that's a big achievement. I really want to thank you guys so much for, um, you know, listening, telling a friend, and continue to tell another friend as we continue to grow this show. Also, please continue to support my other show, the Short Disc Podcast, which drops every Tuesday with my co-host John, Steph, and Dwayne. Um, really appreciate all of the support that we're getting for both these shows here. As you guys know, every week I speak with someone that is an extraordinary person from all walks of life. And this week is no different. I want to bring on a young lady that I've known for quite a while through the internet, of course. I think that's how we meet most of the people that we are in contact with these days. She has an extraordinary story um, that I feel people need to listen to, and the things that she was able to overcome. But this is an extraordinary story. You may think of, oh man, this is pretty bad, but it isn't, because she's here to tell the story. And not many people would be able to tell this story. I want to introduce to you today Shannon Bagley. How are you, Shannon?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank the Lord. Um,
Thank the Lord.
yes. So I wanted to bring you on today, Shannon, to tell your story. Again, like I said, Conversations with Ronnie Keith is about having conversations with people from all walks of life, but extraordinary people from all walks of life. And you have an extraordinary story. Really a tale of how God saved your life. And
Physically and
yes,
spiritually for sure, but definitely physically.
yes, absolutely. So let's give the people a little bit of background of who you are, and then we can get into your story that we want to tell.
Okay. Well, my name is Shannon, as he said, but most people, everyone I know, they do call me Shay. It's kind of like a term of endearment.
Yes.
I currently live in Tulsa. It is such an amazing place and a vibe. And I hope that if anybody ever gets to the United States or you're listening to this, come to Tulsa. Like, bypass Atlanta, bypass all those other places. Come to Tulsa. Like, Tulsa is the place to be. I'm telling you, it's so mellow,
Really?
it's so calm, it's so many things to do. It's just a beautiful vibe, a beautiful place to be. So
Hmm.
there's that.
All right.
Um, I am pushing 40, Lord. I am
Uh-oh.
pushing 40 with two beautiful little girls that I am currently raising, Paisley and Grayson. And that's about it. Just kind of growing up, going from glory to glory and doing what I need to do, living
Nothing wrong
life.
with that. Yes. So all the people that are still trying to move down here to Florida, please visit Tulsa. You really like it.
Come
I've never
here.
been to
Come here
Tulsa.
first.
I've never been to Tulsa. I have to check it out one of these days.
Oh man, it's so nice. It's so beautiful. Now, we don't have the oceans, but we have a ton of lakes. It's a huge thing here. Like,
Okay.
the brunch scene is amazing. The bar scene is amazing. The restaurant scene is amazing. There's always tons of things to do, different, definitely a whole bunch of new people that you can meet. It's a good spot. I love it.
All right. That Midwest living. I hear a lot of folks love that Midwest living.
And it's
A lot of
affordable. So if
yes.
Florida is not affordable for you,
Mm.
or Atlanta is not affordable for you, or Texas, because we know that they're high. Tulsa is an affordable place.
Okay. All right. I believe it because it show. Uh, it's a little bit too high down here where we are, but we don't have no state taxes, so I ain't gonna complain. So Shannon, it's so weird when you said that earlier. Like people know me as Shay, and it's like, oh, let me adjust to calling her Shannon on the show because I say Shay too. But let's go ahead and jump into the story that you have of your life and what happened, your life changing story to you on a fateful day.
Okay, well, this actually happened quite a few years ago. It happened about 10 years ago. I was living in Mississippi at the time. It's a little small place called Tupelo.
Mhm.
And I was just there basically getting my life together. I was in the process of separating from, well, I had been separated from my current ex-husband. From my ex-husband now, we were separated. We had been separated for years. And I originally grew up in Decatur, Georgia, and
Mm,
when he and I split up, all of this leads to the story. It's all
okay.
backstory. When
Okay.
he and I split up, like there was really no reason for me to go back to Atlanta. There was no reason for me to go back to Decatur. So I just kind of stayed in Mississippi and just kind of made a life. I had a pretty good job. I was I didn't have any kids at the time. I didn't have Paisley. I didn't have Grayson. I didn't have anybody. I grew up in a group home, so I wasn't really connected uh with my parents or my family. I was just kind of a nomad, I guess you can say. I was just kind of walking life alone.
So you
And
were you
so
were adopted?
no, I wasn't. I grew up in a group
Oh,
home.
oh, you grew up in a group home. I'm sorry. Oh,
Hmm.
wow. Wow. How was that? I mean, did you know your parents at all or
Yes, I knew them. I knew them. And it just was so a lot of backstory and a lot of things that happened in the family that it just defects didn't think that it was a place for me to be. And so I
Mm,
wasn't.
okay. Good, good. Okay. All right. And was
But
that
that's
a
another story. It's a completely
yeah.
different story.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So you grew up in Decatur. That was where you grew up in a group home. Am I right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All
Correct.
right. All right. All right.
So I was in Mississippi, just kind of living my life, making money, living a single girl's life. And I stayed in an apartment complex called Wondaville. And it was a nice little place. It was a little hood, but it was nice. It was affordable. It was affordable for a single person. And I had a neighbor that lived across from me. Like when you walked into a building, you had to go into the building and then you would go into the hallway where you would see our apartments. And when I had a neighbor that lived across from me and she had just got a car. Now, I did not have a car at this time and I had just moved to Tupelo. I was living in a different little city called Amory and it was like 30 minutes away, but my job was closer to Tupelo. So I did not have a car at this. No, I did have a car at this time. No, I did not have a car at this time. I did
Mhm.
not have a car at this time. She had a car and she had got into it with her mom in in the apartment complex and it was really really late at night. It was like midnight. She had got into a fist fight, a physical altercation with her mom and she was kind of young. She was like 19. So
Mhm.
she knocked on my door and she asked me, could she come over and could she stay the night? And I was telling her, well, I don't have any groceries in the house. Like there's nothing here. I would have to go get groceries if you stayed here for a couple days. I would have to, go get some food or something for you to drink because I was the type of person and still am, Lord forgive me, to always eat out, like never have groceries in the house. So she was like,
Mhm.
and I did not have a car at this time, as I stated. So she was like, "Well, I can take you in my car, but I just can't stay with my mom. I can't stay this because the altercation was so bad that it had turned physical between her and her mom." So,
Mm.
I was like, "Okay, well, that's fine. We can go." And see, at that time, Walmart was 24 hours. So this was obviously
Mhm.
pre-COVID. This was obviously
Right.
prior to them closing down all the Walmarts. And
Mhm.
she was like, okay, well, we can just go now. Walmart's open right now. We can go. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. So we left and we went to Walmart. We did a little bit of grocery shopping. And as we were leaving out, and mind you, it was really late. It took us about I don't know, an hour to grocery shopping. So that put us about 1:15 at Walmart in the morning.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we were walking out. The place is pretty desert, as normally it would be if you're going in super late. And we were walking to the car, we were taking groceries to the car, and this guy pulled up in the car, and he was like, hey, look, my car is really broken down, it's really messing up. Do you think that you could give me a ride to the hospital?
Mhm.
So I kept walking, and so did she, but she was very much just engaging with him, speaking with him. And she was like, well, I don't know. And he was just very persistent about it. No, you could get me to the hospital, a ride to the hospital. It's just right up there. It's just right up there. So he followed us in the car that he was driving, that he
Oh my
claimed was
gosh.
broken down, in the car that he was driving, and parked next to us.
Uh-huh. Oh
And
wow. So he had his car and
he
he
had his
claimed it was
car.
he claimed it was broken down, but he drove it next to you guys.
He was driving, right. He was driving, following up behind us, asking us to give him a ride to the hospital. So,
Wow. And what time was this again?
this is like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh God. Okay.
This is like 1 o'clock in the morning at that time. So, I was telling her, under my breath, I was telling her, no, I don't think it's a good idea that you give him a ride to the hospital. I don't
Mhm.
think that you should take him to the hospital. This isn't a good idea. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. So, I guess he overheard me say this to her, and he was like, well, I'll just give you $100 if you take me to the hospital. Now, mind you, this is also before Uber was a thing, before Lyft was a
Right.
thing. And like,
Right.
even then, like, Uber and Lyft is not even a big popular thing right now in Tulsa.
Mm.
I mean, in
Mm.
Tupelo. It's not even a big thing in Tupelo now. It's not a huge where people access it and use it even now to this day, where it is
Mm.
a very marketable kind of taxi cab thing. No, they just
Mhm.
had regular taxis. They were really expensive, and they only ran at certain times.
Wow. Okay.
And we didn't have public transportation in Tupelo either. So you can
Oh
imagine this is kind
really?
of like a kind of a small city. And they still don't have public transportation there.
Wow. Okay.
So, she is parked, and we are putting the groceries in the car, and he parks next to her, and he's telling her, oh, well, I can give you $100 if you take me to the hospital. And she was like, okay, well, that's fine. Come on and get in. And I'm telling her, I was like, you're not really going to take him to the hospital. And she was like, for $100, yeah, I'll take him to the hospital. Yeah, I sure will. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay. So she gets in the driver's seat because it's her car. I get into the passenger seat. And mind you, hindsight, I guess it would make sense that you shouldn't put strangers, well, you shouldn't take strangers anywhere, by the way. Let me
Right.
preface by saying that. But after the incident, people used to always tell me, if you do pick up a stranger, you always put them in the front seat in case stuff like this happens. I never knew anything like that. So I didn't think about that. And
Right. Right.
he got into the back seat, and
Mhm.
both of us were in the front seat, and we are driving, and we turn out of Walmart going towards the hospital. Now, mind you, this is a very small city, so everything is like 10-15 minutes away. So
Right.
we make a left as if we are going towards the Tupelo hospital. As we're going
Mhm.
towards the Tupelo hospital, we get to that there's a red light right there at the Walmart,
Mhm.
and there is a small uh car wash on the right hand side. And he was like, actually, can you turn around and just take me to my auntie's house? And it's just right down the street.
Mhm.
So I look at her, and she looks at me, and she makes a U-turn in the car wash to go the opposite way.
Mhm.
Now, like I said, I had just moved to Tupelo, so from another small area, so I didn't really know the city that well. But
Right.
because I grew up in Decatur, I knew that when you would get out into the suburbs or the country area, like you know that you're in that area because there are less street lights.
Mm-hmm.
So we're driving, and we are just driving some more, and it just seems like an endless drive. But I noticed that we are going out of the city of Tupelo, and out of the city of Tupelo, it's just like fields, nothing but fields, and it's like it's like the country area.
Now, let me ask you this, Shay. During the time that you guys are just driving, is it silence in the car? Like, is he
Okay.
saying anything?
Okay, so it's like awkward silence,
Mm-hmm.
but we are driving and he does strike up a conversation and he introduces himself. He's like, "Oh, my name is Chris." So I introduced myself as Shay, and
Mm-hmm.
the girl that was with me, her name was Bree. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
Brianna was talking, and they didn't start talking like they knew each other, but they talked as if they have briefly met before. And he was like, "Oh, I remember you. Um, she was like, "Yeah, I remember you too." He said, "I tried to talk to you, but you shut me down." She was like, "Yeah, I was just in a hurry. I was trying to get off work. I was trying to do this." And just like she was just basically explaining why she rejected him.
Mm-hmm.
So, we keep going, and like that's just kind of the end of the conversation. We keep going, and she's like, "This is kind of a long drive down 6th Street, Chris. And I don't really have any gas." And he was like, "Oh, it's not that much further." So at this time I'm getting a little, you know how you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach, or your hair start
Yeah.
to intuition, whatever it is. You could call it
Mm-hmm.
intuition, you could call it the Holy Spirit. I know I call it
Mm-hmm.
the Holy Spirit. I just wasn't
Mm-hmm.
very in tune with him at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some mace in my bag, so I was looking out the window, and I put my hand in the bag to grab the mace. And as I'm looking out the window, all you heard was just this loud bang. It was just like a pop, and all I could
Oh.
hear is just like ringing in my ears. And like that's just, oh my gosh, just pain and ringing. I could not figure out what was going on, and I passed out in the passenger seat. I was holding the side of my ear. I was coughing up blood. When I coughed up blood, I
Oh.
passed out.
Jesus.
So I did eventually come to, and I was bleeding from the side of my face, and I stumbled out of the car. I had dragged myself out of the car. The car was on the side of the street. It was abandoned. There was nobody in the car. She wasn't in the car. He wasn't in the car. Nobody was in the car. I drag myself out of the car. I start walking back towards Walmart, but we had already been driving like 15, 20 minutes. I had started
Right.
walking back towards Walmart, and I had tried to flag down some people, but they would not stop. I finally
Yeah.
got this red truck to stop, but when they stopped a far back. When they stopped, this man came out of my peripheral vision on my left side. Oh, I want to cry about it now.
Mm. It's okay. It's all right.
He
Take your
came
time.
out, man. He came out on my left side, and he shot me. Like he shot me. He hit me in the face with a gun. He shot me a couple more
Mm.
times, and I passed out in the middle of the street.
Mm.
I remember just falling to my knees. I remember hitting the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember like going in and out of consciousness, and he wound up stealing the car. And then when I woke up in the ambulance.
Mm.
And when I woke up, I was asking them, what happened. And they were trying to
Mm-hmm.
ask me, who are you? What's going on? We believe you've been shot. I was definitely still going in and out of consciousness. And like,
Mm-hmm.
they were cutting the clothes off of my body because they
Mm.
were trying to figure out where I had been shot.
Mm-hmm.
And
Take your time. Take your time. Take your time.
And the only thing that I could remember was the house, the landline. Like, people don't even have landlines anymore. But the only
Right.
thing that I could remember was the landline from my biological mom's house, which was also my grandmother's house. Like, that was the only, no, I couldn't remember my name. I didn't
Mm,
know where I was at. I didn't even
mm,
know whose number it belonged to. That was the only number that I could remember.
mm,
And I remember waking up in the hospital.
mm-hmm.
And when I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't talk. Like, I really couldn't even, I couldn't move really, but I couldn't talk because I clearly had like all of these tubes going down, like tubes everywhere. Um, I remember the ICU nurse coming in and she was just like, "Girl, you have an angel on you. You have an angel on you. You have been through something really serious." I have been in the ICU room for like 3 days,
Oh wow.
just kind of unconscious, just 3 days. And I
Mm-hmm.
finally woke up.
Okay. So you, when you were talking in the ambulance, that was the last thing you remembered
That was the
until you
last thing
woke
I
up
remembered.
again.
Well, I remember I woke up in the hospital. I did wake up in the hospital when I got to like the trauma center. I woke up in the hospital, and you know how like they like like how in the movies they bring you in on the stretcher and they're like shoving
Yeah.
tubes down your throat. Like, I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
wake up in that instance, but I went right back to sleep. I passed right back out.
Okay.
And then the
Okay.
next thing I remember is waking up in ICU.
Mm, my goodness.
And
So at this time, you're connected to these, of course, to these machines and things like that, and the nurse comes in and tells you that you have an angel by your side because of what you have been through. So at this point, you're still not aware of what has happened to you at this moment. You
correct.
just know
I
that
still
yeah.
correct. Correct.
Okay.
Now, as people start coming in, I obviously couldn't talk, but I could still write. Like, I could still write. I could
Hmm.
still answer questions. I I was able to remember like the incident, and I did write the incident down. Um
Okay.
Eventually the police did come in, and I was still barely functioning. And the police
Right.
did come in and they did a lineup, like a picture lineup on paper. And
Oh
they
wow.
asked me to point out who could have done this to me. They did explain everything that happened, and they asked me to point out who could have done this to me and
Huh.
who he was. And I pointed him out because he was on the lineup. I did point him
Oh
out.
wow. Hmm.
And I told him I told him that he introduced himself as Chris. Like, I wrote that down. His name was Chris.
Hmm.
So, you know, as things as the week goes on, like, mind you, God, he's so funny. Really, he's not funny, but he is so funny because, I was only in the hospital for a week. I was only in the
Oh.
hospital for a week. Like, after I got out of ICU, I was only in
Hmm.
the hospital for like 7 days after that.
Well, let me ask you this, Shay. Had they told you the severity of your injuries, like where you were shot, what happened at
Yes.
that point? Okay. So
Yes, they did tell me.
what did they say happened to you, or where you were
Okay.
shot?
Okay. Well, one, I was shot 4 times with a 9 millimeter. I was shot in my jaw. So that was the loud ringing that I heard when I first passed out in the car, and why I was coughing up blood, and like why there was so much pain, why it was so loud, because the gun went off and it hit me right in front of my ear and went through my jaw, and it broke my
Oh
jaw.
my god. Oh my god.
So I passed out at that time. When I woke up, I guess maybe just adrenaline or whatever, but I had not realized I had been shot. I didn't know
Hmm.
that that's what was going on.
Hmm.
Um, when he came out of the field on from my peripheral vision, um, he shot me like point blank range on my forehead, and it kind of like ricocheted
Oh,
off my forehead and like skinned the top of my head. And then that's when I fell. And he shot me in my left shoulder. And then when I was on my hands and knees, he shot me in the back of the neck.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Those are, I mean, any gunshot can be fatal, but those are typically fatal gunshot areas: the head, the neck, the jaw, and the shoulder.
Right.
Wow.
It turns out that he was using practice bullets, not like, I guess maybe the, well, I don't know. I've never been to a gun range, but they were
Hmm.
not like the 9 millimeter bullets that kind of balloon when you
Hmm.
shoot and it hits the target. They were just kind of like ballpoint, from what they were explaining to
Oh,
me.
okay.
They were kind of
Okay.
like ballpoint bullets,
Hmm.
but I'm sure that if he would have used real regular bullets, I probably wouldn't be here today. Probably not.
Wow. So you weren't in a coma, were you? You just was passed out unconscious from, loss of blood and shock, or did they have to put you in a coma?
I think it was passed out in shock. They didn't tell me whether or not it was an induced coma to like keep me alive, or I
Hmm.
just hadn't woke up. Like when I went to sleep, I just didn't wake up.
Okay.
They didn't tell
Okay.
me. They didn't explain that to me, actually.
Okay.
So then
S-
as we were, there's actually a lot more to the story. Like as
Yeah.
because sometimes I put my testimony on Facebook. Like sometimes it's on
Hmm.
Facebook, and people will
Right.
be like, "Oh, that girl set you up. She set you up." But like, what did she set me up with? Like now this is to defend her 100%. Like she didn't know me. You know what I'm saying? We were just neighbors. What would she have
Hmm.
set me up with? I didn't have a car. I didn't have anything that like she could have I didn't have a man. She wasn't trying to take that. I didn't have like
Hmm.
there was nothing that she could have stolen and nothing that they could have gotten together. There was barely any furniture in my apartment at that time. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So it
Hmm.
wasn't as if like she was, trying to hurt me. She was actually hurt in the process as well, because it turns out when I passed out in the middle of the street before the ambulance got there, he stole her car. Like because I told you when I woke up, the car was abandoned. It
Right. It
was
was empty.
abandoned. Nobody was
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
So, between reading her police report and like talking to her after everything had transpired, um when she saw me slumped over in the car, he was trying to hold her at gunpoint. But she got out of the car and she took off running through the fields because we were kind of in the country. So she took off running through the fields to find the first house that she could go to. She said, like, and she said this in the police report too, that when she got to the first house would not let her in. They wouldn't open the door. But when she got to the
Hmm.
second house, that's who called the ambulance. That's who called the ambulance to tell them like there was a robbery, someone got shot, someone's out in the middle of the street. That person, those people are who helped her. They let her in, they called 911 for her, like they did all that. And like he had
Hmm.
got out, like when she got out and ran through the fields, he had got out and ran through the fields after her. So I'm thinking when I passed out, that's when they were running through the fields and she got to the house. When I came to, that's when he came back to kind of like finish off the job and take the car. So he stole her
Hmm.
car and he took off. And it turns out that he wound up crashing the car um
Hmm.
a little bit further. I don't know. I don't know where he crashed the car at, but he did wind up crashing the car in his escape. He did wind up crashing the car in his escape. Now
Okay.
we stayed in Tupelo at the time, but they found him a few days later in a little city called Kosciuszko, which is like way down there by Jackson. So he had a lot of time to get away because Kosciuszko is like 4 hours away, 5 hours away from Tupelo.
Oh wow. Wow.
So,
So
right.
she wasn't
She
shot.
she was not shot. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Now, I
Okay.
think just running through the bushes and stuff like that because she did have a black eye, her arm was sprained, and I think that that could just be her, like her trying to escape and
Mm-hmm.
running through like the field and stuff that probably debris, bushes, stuff that probably hit her.
Mm-hmm.
But no,
Okay.
she had not been shot.
Wow. So what damage was done to you from the shooting? I know you said that you weren't able to talk. Um, what
I
what
wasn't able
happened?
to talk. I wasn't able to talk, and my jaw was broken, and they had to wire my
Mm,
jaw shut. I had to have like a lot of extensive surgery, dental surgery on my jaw, and and on my face. Like I had to have some reconstruction surgery on my face that the state paid for with some really good plastic surgeons, and they did a really good job. But like there was this huge scar down the side of my face from where like just the bullet exited, and it was just kind of a mess on my face. And like
mhm,
when it healed, it it was like there wasn't enough muscle tissue, and so the skin basically stuck to my bone, and you could put like your
oh wow.
finger in it, but like that's how deep the dent was in my face. So the reconstruction surgery fixed all that. They wired my jaw shut. That was like a 9-10 week process. And then I went
Oh my
through
god.
physical therapy on my jaws because I really couldn't open them or close them. So I
Hmm.
went through like extensive therapy on my jaws. And then I also had to go through like physical therapy for about a year because anytime I would bend my neck, because I could walk,
Hmm.
I could write, I could do all of that stuff. And once I took the tubes out, I was also able to talk. But like whenever I would bend my neck, I could feel like, tingling sensation go from my neck
Hmm.
all the way through my body. Like my
Ooh.
neck, my spine, my arms, like it was just like it would just go straight through my body. But
Wow. Wow.
so
So
I did like a year of physical therapy with that as well.
okay. Wow. And let me ask you this: Did were they able to get the bullets out of you, or do you
Uh
still have the bullets inside?
Three of them exited. The one in my jaw exited, the one in my shoulder exited, the one in my forehead, it didn't like actually go into my forehead. It kind of like the doctors had a hard time describing it, but it kind of like it touched the tip of my forehead because you can still see where the indent is on my forehead, but then it
Hmm.
like veered to the top and just went zoop, like right up over my forehead.
Oh my god.
It was like some sort of ricochet or some sort of shield that just like veered it off. Now the one in the back of my neck, there's
Hmm.
still bullet fragments there because it basically fused two of my vertebrae together, two of my
Oh wow.
neck vertebrae together.
Oh
But
my
I don't have
goodness.
that sensation anymore. So there's
Okay.
that.
So that's good. That's a blessing. So they found a guy a couple of weeks
Cities
later.
down.
Yeah,
They
cities
did.
down. Okay. So did you have to go through the whole process of going to court and, the whole prosecution of him and what happened to him?
I did have to go through the whole process of court and prosecution. Uh well, one, we know that his name really wasn't Chris. It was not Chris. It was just a fake name that he gave me and my neighbor. So there was that. And
Mm.
then uh it took like a year to even get into the to go to court. It took about a year to go to court. And also, like the laws in Mississippi, they're so I don't know if they're outdated or if they're iffy
Mm.
or what it is, but they don't have attempted murder in Mississippi. So
I'm
they
sorry,
had to
what?
Yeah, they don't have attempted murder in Mississippi at that time. I don't know if they do now, but they definitely don't have it. They definitely didn't have it then. So they couldn't charge him with attempted murder. They had to charge him with like multiple accounts to kind of like weigh heavy on his sentence. So they had to charge him with like kidnapping. They had to charge him with like robbery with an aggravated robbery with a weapon. They had
Hmm.
to charge him with like felon with a weapon. They had to charge him with multiple
Charges,
felonies or
violent
charges. Yes,
felony. Yeah,
multiple, yeah,
yeah.
multiple charges to like, and I don't even think it was something to make it stick, but because I think they had an overwhelming amount of evidence, including two eyewitnesses, but which is
Hmm.
myself and Bree. But
Hmm.
I just think that because he had apparently he was already on parole when he committed the
Oh
offense.
my
So,
God.
oh, and you know what? I'm looking at this reflection in the mirror right now as I'm talking to you in the reflection in the phone. I also have a metal
Hmm.
plate in my in on the right side of my face from where he hit me with the gun, and it like
Oh my God.
split. It like split this like the eye socket. It like broke the eye socket bone and like split the skin right there, so they had to put like a metal plate right there to like
Oh
reconstruct that area.
my God. My God. Mm. Jesus. Whew.
It was a lot, but yeah, it was a
So he
lot.
went to he went to prison.
He did go to prison, and they gave him two consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. And that
Oh,
could have
thank you, God.
And that could have been because, he was already on parole when it happened. And
Hmm.
like then he got out and then turned around and did this again. You know what I'm saying? And I don't
Hmm.
know, I don't know what he did to be on parole prior to it, but he just committed another offense again,
Yeah.
which is why they were like, no, we're not going to do that. And then also in Mississippi, from what I understand, from what they were trying to tell me, is that like the life sentences are like 25 years, so that's why he got two consecutive life sentences. So that was 50 years together. Couldn't
Okay.
like had to be served back to back.
Man, Mississippi's still stuck in the 20s. I know that we make the joke about that sometimes on the Short Desk podcast, but good grief, y'all. I hope they done got with the times now because, you
I
know,
I hope so.
attempted
I hope
murder is
so.
attempted murder. That should be, but I'm glad he got 50 years, you know.
Yeah.
I know that may have been traumatizing, probably seeing him in the courthouse after everything happened for you.
It really isn't. It really wasn't. It really wasn't
Hmm.
traumatizing. It wasn't. And then I also had to go through therapy. I also had
Yes.
already been going through therapy a lot for that because I had a lot of PSTD. Like I couldn't really drive, and then when I was in the passenger seat, like if cars would come. If they would drive up on the side, like if they would just come really quickly or out of nowhere, like I would
Hmm.
jump. Like I really had, and I had nightmares for probably a month afterwards over it, where it would like play over and over again in my mind. But
Hmm.
but I had already been going through extensive therapy for like a year over that situation.
Wow. Wow. So, how are you now, like, with that? I know that, every year, I'm sure around that time it comes up. As you said, you've posted about it before on social media. Like, what is your state of mind now with that?
Um, Well, I don't really talk about it very often, and I guess maybe there's still some things that do need to be healed because, like, I just kind of feel like when you don't cry about it anymore, you're kind of 100% healed over it. And so it could be that I don't talk about it very often, which is why I still cry about it sometimes. But I only cry about it when I get into depth about it, when I start
Hmm.
talking in depth about it. And it could just be because, like, I really am grateful for life. Like, thank you, Lord, for saving me. And thank you, Lord, for, letting me live out my life and have daughters and just kind of, you know, be here, be in the moment, be alive, and, just thank you so much for it. And so maybe it could be tears of gratitude, or maybe it could be tears of trauma. And I need to revisit that with my therapist.
Yeah, Shay, I'm no therapist. I will say that a lot of times we suppress things, any type of traumatizing event, and we think that we're okay because we just stop crying about it. And God has a way of letting us know that no, you're not okay. And it's not saying that you're going to always have these mental scars from it, no, but releasing some of that is helpful, and it's okay to cry about it. That's the thing that we have to understand. Whenever there's been an event that's happened to us, whether from your perspective, when you dealt with this firsthand, or when you lose a loved one or something happens to you, it's okay to cry.
Right.
We can't have that stigmatism on ourselves where things ain't good because I'm crying about it. No, it's okay to cry because you're releasing some of those things that you have suppressed or bent up inside of you. And so I think that you're dealing with it, you've dealt with it, and God has kept you. But it doesn't hurt to cry, and it doesn't hurt to continue to seek therapy on it. You
Yeah.
may need someone to talk to about it for the rest of your life, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you because of that. You know what I mean? It's fine
Yeah.
because not everybody can see. Not everyone can walk around and live and tell the story that, hey, I was shot 4 times and I'm still here. Not everybody can tell that story. That's a testimony, you know.
I know
And
that's
so
right.
I thank God that you're still here. I thank God that you were able to continue on with your life, and have your daughters, and still maintain a healthy, balanced life, not only for yourself but for your daughters. And let me ask you, do you still keep contact with the young lady, Bree, or
We talk every now and again, but it's very rare, like every couple years or something like that. She actually reached out to me last Christmas, around, because it happened around Christmas. It happened around December 17th,
hmm
I believe.
okay. Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
so we still talk, but it's very, very rare. It's very
Okay.
rare. Just kind of checking in, hey, making sure life is good and you straight and you still living, it's all good type thing, but
Yeah.
nothing too close, because like we weren't really close anyway. We were just kind of cool, and she was my neighbor.
Right, 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 right. Okay. um I'm so glad you shared your story for awareness, because I I always stress, and I have a younger sister, right? She's a grown woman. We're 10 years apart. She's almost 32 years old. But I always stress the importance of going somewhere late at night by herself, um, because it's so dangerous. And in this instance, you weren't by yourself; you were with someone else. But we see a man that, hey, I see two women I can easily prey upon, and this is what happened 1 o'clock in the morning. And not saying that it doesn't happen during the day. It does happen during the daytime. Things like this happens all times of day, but you know it is somewhat dangerous to go out at nighttime, and you thinking you're doing a good deed and helping someone, and people just
And they
have
just take
malicious
advantage
intent.
of you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. They have malicious
Yes.
intent. Malicious intent. So, um, yeah, just people. I tell you, men and women, but especially women, be very, very aware. Even in that moment, Shay, you were still ready because you said you had your hand on the mace, but it happened just that quick. The minute you put your
So
hand on your
quick.
mace, yeah. So yeah, it's just I would say, hey, if somebody you get approached by somebody, let them know you'll call help for them. You're not gonna let them in your
Right.
car because you just can't trust anyone. And in that moment, you didn't have control over it because it wasn't your car; it was someone else's car. But you
Right.
know, for those of you that are listening, just hey, I'll call help for you. But make sure you're around someone and not by yourself. Um, Shay, I know that was painful to relive. I just want to take the time out and say thank you so much for sharing your story. Um, I know that this will be a testimony and a blessing for someone else. And the testimony in all this is that God still has you here, and it's for a
Amen.
reason. It's for a reason.
Amen.
Yes. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. Listen, guys, thank you for listening to this story. Really appreciate you guys taking the time out. We will be back next week. Thank you so much for listening to Conversations with Ronnie Keith.